What's up, ladies and gentlemen? Ryan Thomas, live on the Thomas Take Sports Podcast, bring you another Wednesday edition. And folks, yes, we're supposed to have a guest on today. He had to reschedule, and that's part of the fun, putting guests together and them rescheduling. But no harm, no foul, because this is a freight train. We're moving forward. We're pushing on, and there's no need to really, be worried about that. This guest will be coming on the show. This guest will be on the podcast. This guest is a guest that I'm very excited about, and as you guys know, it is my next Buffalo Bills player, Reed Ferguson. So he'll be on probably tomorrow. And these guys are busy guys. These guys are preparing for the training and stuff that they're about to endure. They did OTAs. They're working out in their homes. They're doing a lot of different stuff. It's pretty rare for these guys to have family time, and that's what he was experiencing. He was experiencing some family time. So I let him take that time, and we'll talk soon. But today, no guest. It will be just me on the podcast talking about a few different topics. I feel like I got some catching up to do because I've just been so busy joining other shows. On Sunday, this past Sunday, I was on the Jets Factor with CJ DeSimone. On Monday, I was on with Trainwreck Sports and Degenerate Al and Ty B of Trainwreck Sports. That was a great time, a lot of fun. Very much enjoyed it, and I look forward to being on the show with those guys again. Oh, sometime in the near future. So all that being said, woke up this morning, and I was feeling pretty tired. But I felt like, you know what, I'm going to keep pushing. I'm going to trudge along. I went out to the driving range, hit some golf balls. Some went left, some went right, some went right down the pipe. Beautiful shots, at a few beautiful, nice driver shots, practicing the swing, getting the swing down, and just making contact with the ball. Trying to just use my hips and not my feet. Not step into it like a baseball. My baseball habits are I'm really fighting these baseball habits when I'm playing golf. So one day at a time, right? Tiger Woods didn't become Tiger Woods in a day. It took practice. It took dedication. It took commitment. I'm not going to say I'm going to go that far as my practice, but I'd like to get a little bit better. Wouldn't mind playing in a couple tournaments at some point. And seeing what I can do, seeing what I can make happen out on one of the golf courses locally. So, did that today, and then went to where did I go after that? I can't remember. But anyway, along the path of my day, I saw a story come out that UFC President Dana White is looking to overturn a fight that was played out in 2009. This fight was between Jon Jones and Matt Hamill. This fight was an Ultimate Fighter main event, Ultimate Fighter event, where the main event was the heavyweights, Roy Nelson, Brendan Schaub, trying to duke it out, I believe, for the tough title. Whoever won that show got a UFC contract, and that was Roy Nelson. But Jon Jones fought Matt Hamill on that night, and Jon Jones then was 9-0, young, up-and-comer, phenom, all these things that were being thrown his way as far as praise and positive reinforcement of him being the next big thing within the Ultimate Fighting Championship. And he takes on a guy by the name of Matt Hamill, who also was a contestant on The Ultimate Fighter Season 3, where he was on a team with, I can't remember who the coaches were for that season. I think they were Tito and Ken Shamrock, if I'm not mistaken. I could be wrong on that, but I'm pretty sure I am right. They were both on Team Tito, and they both ended up making, their impact, I believe. In the season, Matt Hamill actually got hurt and would have been in line to fight Michael Bisping for that Ultimate Fighter, contract. But Matt Hamill got hurt, and Michael Bisping won it off of somebody else. So Matt Hamill was a good fighter. He had good wrestling. Was one of the more well-known wrestlers. Was also the first deaf UFC fighter, and that really was a remarkable story. His story is one of the more remarkable stories in MMA, and it even was so remarkable that they made a movie off of it. The Hammer was what it was called. So that was a hell of a story, and you saw his career kind of have these peaks and valleys, but along the way he did fight Jon Jones, and Jon Jones put the hurt on Matt Hamill. He threw him around, he elbowed him, he jabbed him, he did everything that he could, took him down at will, and for him to do that versus Matt Hamill says a lot. So Jon Jones, at one point in the fight in a dominant position, he's dropping 12-6 elbows on the head of Matt Hamill. Now, that technique is illegal. Literally 12-6, 12 o'clock to 6 o'clock, up and down. And the reason that these commissions have made it illegal is due to the fact that in the sport of karate, these kids' karate classes, they take a piece of plywood or whatever, put it under their elbow, and then the kid does a 12-6 elbow drop. The commissions literally think that the force of an elbow from a 12-6 angle can crush the brain. I don't know about that. I know that if you punch someone in the back of the head or behind the ear, their equilibrium gets off, and that can actually do more damage than the top of the head. The top of the head is actually the part of the skull that you do not want to hit with anything because it's the hardest part of the skull. So I'll throw that in there. You see a lot of fighters, throwing overhand right like Uriah Faber did against Mike Brown. Uriah Faber throws that overhand right. It lands right on the crown of Mike Brown's head, and his hand just completely snapped. So that's my case in point. It's a weird rule. It's an odd rule. I don't get the rule. I don't think the rule makes that much sense, but neither here nor there. It is still a rule, and Jon Jones broke that rule, but the ref of that fight was a ref by the name of Steve Mazzagatti, who does not even ref fights in the UFC anymore or for any other major mixed martial arts league, because Steve Mazzagatti was well known to have made plenty of screw-ups throughout his time as a referee for the Nevada State Athletic Commission. And we're talking about Nevada State. We're talking about the biggest fight state on the UFC calendar. Yeah, they've went to New York a lot. They've been, but the true hub, the headquarters of the UFC is in Las Vegas. So Las Vegas is, quote unquote, yes, I'll say it, the most notorious place for a UFC fight, for a UFC event. So they were just not on the right track as far as the commission went with the UFC, and they ruled this fight in the octagon and outside of the octagon a disqualification loss for Jon Jones, and technically a TKO win for Matt Hamill. So Matt Hamill owns a win over Jon Jones, which is silly. It's ridiculous. And the thought that Dana White is looking to take this loss away and make it into a no contest, I think is right. I think it's fair. And I'm very happy that this is actually being talked about, because I thought it was ridiculous then, and I think it's ridiculous now. Furthermore, if the UFC decides to go above and beyond and get this loss overturned to a no contest, you have to have more restructuring take place. You have to have rules and regulations be revisited so that way these things do not happen. And that is my take on Jon Jones deciding to go with Dana White, hand in hand. And this is odd because Dana's talked a lot of trash about Jon Jones. Jon Jones has talked a lot of trash about Dana. You almost wonder if the relationship is much better now that Jon Jones is making Dana White money. And Jon Jones said, when you make Dana money, he'll love you, but if you do anything to mess it up, he'll hate you and cast you out. And that's what Dana actually did. So can Jon Jones handle the pressure of being that undefeated guy? Even if that loss in his loss column isn't a loss, he could always say that to himself. But then you add new pressure onto yourself being undefeated. And Jon Jones has said that he has thought of himself as undefeated. Well, I would say so as well, but that's not what the record shows. It shows that there was a disqualification for 12 to 6 elbows on the head of Matt Hamill. It is what it is. And for Jon Jones, he needs to accept that. He needs to deal with that. And I think he does need to fight this, though. I don't disagree with him fighting it, but is that going to cause too much of a headache for Jon Jones? Is that going to cause too much of a headache for Dana White, for the UFC? Might cause a headache for Jon Jones because he doesn't really handle self-pressure too well. And what I mean by that is due to the pressures that he's brought on himself outside of the octagon. Inside the octagon, there's no fighter that's better right now in the world than Jon Jones, in my opinion. But this whole situation is one that is very, very different from what we had heard 2-3 years ago. And I think that there's a lot more to it, and I can't wait to hear what that more to it actually is. I'm Ryan Thomas. That was my take on Jon Jones possibly getting that one lone loss taken off of his record and switched to a no contest. Take care.